Okay, so we are back and we are performing a repair on the Brookstone. If you watched the last video I shot out here on this topic, you guys saw at least the aftermath of when I dropped the panel down right here, water came gushing out. It was holding it like a bowl in there. And the reason for that is because of a water leak. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, did it destroy your frame? No, it didn't happen in the upper deck area where the lag bolts are going through, so I don't have any frame damage. Had it happened up here, though, I would have had to absolutely take a lot of stuff apart on the inside to make sure that the bolts were still tight. Go back and watch the videos where I've talked about this. I actually walked through this. I showed you how to kind of get to that area, and that is super, super important. Now, if you have a newer Brookstone, like a 2023 or 4, you have Asdel on both the interior wall and this exterior wall, which means even if water gets in there, it's less likely to compress and rot, causing the lag bolts to come loose. So that is a good thing. All right, so let me show you what took place. We had water that was dripping down. I showed you guys the bottom side of the black tank, and thank the Lord it was not the black tank that was leaking. What happened was there's an elbow. I love that I put this access panel here, and there is my little aluminum shield that I put up to protect any of my electrical equipment from any water that could potentially, break or damage from here, because you never know, right? If you have water turned on and something freezes or ruptures or a plumbing part fails, it could start spraying water everywhere. So I wanted to create some type of a shield that would allow the water to drain out and not touch any of the inverter equipment or anything else that's back there. And thank the Lord I did that. Anyways, so when you look up here, you see that is the drain for the shower. And there's an elbow which comes down and connects to that piece of plumbing right there. Well, during the last freeze, I guess all the water wasn't drained completely out of the pipe up here. It got caught in that elbow right where the coupler screws on, and it cracked that fitting just enough to allow water to trickle down from the side and drip down onto the floor. Now, thankfully, not only do I have this rubber protective coating down here, but right there, right where you see that little piece of wood right in the middle of the screen, behind there is kind of a drain that goes to above the black tank, which has a hole right in the center of it, and it was allowing the water to literally run right out the bottom. So it wasn't holding it here in the bottom here. Now there is a little bit of lightness you can see here, and that's where some of the water trickled and splattered a little bit. But I spent some time in here yesterday. I kind of removed things so I could get to it, and it doesn't appear as if there's any type of water being held by any panels or boards down here. I am going to test the furnace out though, because water was awfully close to it and some water was definitely dripping near it, but not an extraordinary amount. So I think we're going to be okay right there. But yeah, the big thing right here I'm going to have to just make sure is that we don't have any issues once I get everything put back together, and we're not going to use the same elbow. I'm actually going to go with something a little different, which might actually give me a little bit of extra protection in the event something were to happen again. But let's go ahead and show you on the workbench what's going on. Okay, so before I go over my game plan here, let me show you what I have here. So, every time I go through Sam's Club, I see these bus carts. These are the things that are used in restaurants by bus boys to basically go to the tables, grab the old dishes, cups, glasses, and stuff, take them back to the kitchen and wash them. And I was like, man, I could really use some of these, and they're super cheap. So they're really deep, they're really well built, they're obviously constructed well because they're used in the restaurant industry, the commercial restaurant industry, and I picked up a 2-pack of them, and I think it was like $15. But I can see so many great uses for something like this, especially when it comes time to carry all this out to the RV. I can simply load my bus tray with it, carry it all out there, and be able to kind of have everything in one spot. It also can work out really well if you need to clean things or wash things off or just collect something, as well as kind of a runoff pan in case you have water or something that you want to collect. But I picked up a 2-pack for $15, I think. I think that's how much we paid at Sam's Club. I've had them for a while, and this is kind of my first good opportunity. Actually, I've had a lot of really good opportunities to use them, but this is one where I'm definitely going to use it. What you're looking at in front of you is the original elbow, and this is kind of made from several other pieces to fit what they need. So it's an 1.5-inch PVC, and then you have this part right here which screws on under the sink. The damage, and you can't really see it, there's a small crack inside there, and then there's a crack running down the side here that you might be able to see. It's kind of a hairline crack, and that's from freezing. So basically water got in here and it got into such a small spot, but it had nowhere to go, and it froze and it cracked the pipe. So water was running down right here and right here, causing me a lot of issues over an extended period of time. So we're going to replace that, and I'm going to go a different route. I don't know if the plumbers that watch the channel are going to think this is smart, but this is a low pressure. This is just a drain, and it comes off of the shower, and there's never going to be high pressure behind it. So I wanted to create something that I feel is more apt to working well in an RV environment, if that makes sense. Less rigid, in my opinion, is better when it comes to plumbing. So I got this elbow. This is basically a 1.5 by 1.5 inch elbow, and it will replace this section right here. And then this piece will screw on to the bottom of the shower pan. So this will screw on where this one screws on. This will go on first, and then I'll have the piece of PVC that I'm going to cut right here. So I have an 1.5 PVC that will extend from here. This will tighten on. I could not find a 1.5 inch female threaded to a 1.5 inch outer diameter that would allow this to slip right onto it. So I have to do it this way. But I'll glue that in place. This will clamp to the bottom of the PVC. And then this will have another small piece of PVC that will kind of go like this. And these two will go together. So essentially it'll look like this. And I'll have a really nice flexible hose here that will give it the ability to move a little bit if it needs to. But that's my plan. Hopefully this works well, and hopefully I am potentially avoiding some type of problem in the future. Again, if you get water into fittings and connections, they're going to break if they freeze. This right here, because this is made to be serviceable and you're made to unscrew it like that, you run the risk of getting water inside of this area here and cracking it like it did. So I'm going to replace this part, go this route, and I'll be right back when I'm done. Okay, so here it is. This is my interesting little substitute. It is the exact same size. I had to trim a little bit of this rubber seal off, or sorry, the rubber sleeve off right here so it would space out properly. But it is the exact same dimensions now. This should work out really, really well. This seal right here was inside of here, and I'm going to use that if I can, if I need to. I don't know if I'll need to or not. Probably not, but if it's needed, I have it. But that's how it looks. Let's go ahead and get this thing installed. I don't have these tightened down, of course, yet. And then once we get this screwed in place, I will tighten these down. I'm going to put a little bit of plumbing tape right here, but I think we're going to be in good shape. Let's check it out. Okay, so everything is back in place. Hose clamp is tight, both of them. Everything looks like it should work really well. Let's get the water turned back on, run the shower, and see what happens. Fingers crossed. Okay, water is turned back on. Let's go in the bathroom, turn the shower on. All right, let's see what's happening. Hopefully there's no more leak. All right, coming around. All right, what do we got going on here? I don't see anything. I don't feel anything. Everything looks good. Everything seems to be draining fine. Up here, still have the slope that I'm going to need, of course. And that slope, you can see that piece of PVC back there that the water runs into. I'll let it run here for a minute, see what happens. Doesn't look like I have any problems anymore. Very good. Okay, so the final part of finishing this off was to hang the covering on the bottom back up. And it wasn't challenging, it was actually pretty simple to do. They put some pieces of lumber that sit on the inside flange of the I-beam on the bottom, and the panels overlap, and then you just drill through them and it secures everything together, and it does a good job. I went ahead while I was under here and I touched up some of the rust that was forming on the bottom of the I-beam. This RV is, what now, 4 years old, and it is in South Texas where we get a lot of salt in the air. So yeah, we have a little bit of surface rust. I scraped most of it off, and then I went ahead and touched it up with some rust reformer, and then I'm going to hit it again with some flat black paint in a little bit. But you may wonder what I did over here. Well, because that water was sitting on the underbelly plastic, it deformed it. It made this big dip in it. So when you looked underneath, you could actually see like a bulge on the bottom, and I didn't like that. Plus, of course, when you have something like that happening, it's going to pull a little bit out from the edges that sit on the inner flange of the I-beam. So what I did was I took that extra piece of E-track I had, and I simply ran it all the way across. So it's holding everything up really nice and well. I used some long heavy-duty self-tapping screws with some washers to go ahead and secure it a little better. I'm going to hit that with paint as well, but this is a pretty interesting way to make sure that bottom isn't bulging out the way it was. It was really bad. It's crazy how much water weight, you know, eventually starts to kind of deform things. But that's pretty much it. This was a relatively easy fix once I figured out what was happening. Again, anytime you have water damage, anytime at all, treat it like you have water damage in your home. Actually, treat it as if you had water damage on the second floor of your home. The reason why I say that is because usually the separator between the first and second floor, the floor system, is a lot like an RV. It's elevated off the ground, right? I'm not just dealing with water touching a concrete slab. I'm dealing with water in a confined space. Make sure you get to all of it. Make sure you see what extent there could be damage. That's such an important part of owning an RV, and people oftentimes don't think about it. If you spill a bunch of water inside of your RV, a lot of people mop it up and think it's done, not understanding that if water makes it underneath the linoleum in your RV, it's going to sit, and the linoleum is going to act as a moisture barrier, preventing it from evaporating, and the wood is just going to soak it in, and it's eventually going to start rotting. So you want to be sure anytime there's water damage, you properly ventilate it, you properly dehumidify it, and you properly check for moisture to make sure that isn't just permeating in. And the main factor to think about here is when you own an RV, period, a lot of times they sit around. Even if you live in them full time, you're not always inspecting for anything that could be happening. And then you expect to hitch up to it, tow it off, and nothing that's happened to it while it was sitting there to affect it while you're going down the road. As much as people can claim RVs are built like junk, and to some degree maybe they are, but the thing that I think most people need to factor in on is people don't take care of their RV like they take care of their home, even when their RV is their home. And I think if most people understood the extent that water, humidity, moisture, physical abuse, physical damage can truly impact the structure of your RV, people would take a lot more care of their RV, and they would probably have it inspected more often than they might think. You save a lot of money living in an RV versus a home per se, but do you really treat your RV like the home that you lived in? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Do you have folks come by and just inspect things? Do you have folks come by to fix things? Do you constantly look for ways to improve something, not just the inside of your RV? Are you looking at ways to improve your wiring, your plumbing, things like that that you might do if you owned a home, but you don't think about when you own an RV? When I dropped these panels down here, and you might have seen it in the first video, there were wires. There were all sorts of wires that were ran down there, and none of them had been impacted. I mean, none of them were sitting in the water. Nothing was wet except that panel that was bulging. But I went ahead and got in there and I zip tied everything up. I cleaned it up, because if we want to be able to trust that this RV is going to do what we want it to do for our family, then I need to be able to trust myself going into it, being able to do things to ensure that. And yes, RV manufacturers bear a lot of responsibility for substandard installations, things that they're just not doing correctly. For the most part, RVs do withstand what you subject them to, unless you just subject them to an absurd amount of, you know, whatever you're using it for. But the reality is that they do what they're designed to do reasonably well. But you have to, as an owner, presume that everything wasn't done well, and that you're going to take a look at it and try to make it better, just as if you would with a home. Because we've owned several homes, we own several homes, we have rental properties, and we cannot just assume that nothing bad is going on because we can't see it. And in a home, you typically take those precautions that you might not take in your RV. Anyways, I sure hope you enjoyed the video. Again, this is something I can't blame the manufacturer. I can't blame anybody. I can't blame the frame folks. This is something that just falls squarely on me as an owner of something that requires a lot of maintenance. And that's what I was doing today, fixing the plumbing, putting all that back up there, zipping up, tying some wires shut, inspecting for water intrusion, water damage, all the stuff that you got to do anytime something bad happens. Anyways, guys, sure hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up. We'll talk to you again real soon.